Hey guys, Justin here, and as you can tell by the title of this video, I want to give some of my hottest iRacing takes. If you agree with everything that I say in this video, I've done a bad job and I want you to call me out for it. So I hope that you guys at least disagree with one thing I say here. Alright, so let's get right into it. Jumping into the thing that probably brought you into this video into the first place, I think that iRacing, as we play it, is a game. I think that the technology itself can be considered a simulator, but the way that iRacing is played, it can only be described as a game. So while the physics might be similar, maybe the cars feel really good, or you can even get additional feedback through force feedback or even huge motion sim rigs, at the end of the day, the races that you're doing are all based on a game. For instance, the way that I personally get better at iRacing is by crashing a ton of cars to find the perfect line. And I know that that's a common topic among VRS coaches too, even on the road side of things, is you want to find the absolute limit to the car, and the best way to do that is by crashing. Well, that's not something that's very realistic, and I think takes away from the idea of this being a simulator, because what people do in real life with racing, and just to let you know I have no real life racing experience, is you're not going to be racing your car and crashing at every single corner trying to find the perfect line at a track. I think that the closer the drivers are allowed to get to the absolute perfection optimal line, the farther we stray from what it's like racing in real life. Now, I could be completely off base with this. Maybe some of you guys who race in real life say, oh no, we get really close to the edge there, we get really close to perfection. But I think in my experience in talking to people is that there's just a little more hesitation to push your car in real life, and because of that, the way that the racing is approached and a lot of the people being willing to crash, willing to make mistakes, it ends up making the experience a little less realistic, but more of like a game. And that's not even a bad thing. I'm not trying to argue that it's a bad thing. I just am calling it like it is. I think that the way iRacing is raced online is closer to a video game. Now, the next topic I want to bring up is kind of in the same vein of iRacing being a video game, but instead it's iRacing or sim racing as a whole not being a good esport, and I don't think that sim racing has much of a potential for growth as an esport. Now, if we look at the two things that really tie together all of the biggest esports, is that they come from games that are really massive and have a huge player base, and also that they have a very unique viewing experience to anything else. In terms of having a massive player base, iRacing and sim racing really isn't quite there. But what they do have on their side is that you could potentially bring in real racing fans who don't actually sim race themselves if they want to watch more racing. But my argument is that that really isn't enough of an overlap of people who will seek out that racing on their own to really make a huge difference. The real barrier to entry with iRacing is how much it costs and the equipment that you need to get into sim racing and iRacing. Whereas with a lot of big esports, all you need is a decent computer and a free-to-play game, just like League of Legends or CSGO. Now, iRacing obviously can't be sustainable as a free-to-play service, and that's alright. I'm just saying that the esports side of it doesn't seem as sustainable because you're not able to grow the player base to the massive numbers that other esports seem to have in their games. In terms of the actual viewing experience, it seems like sim racing as a whole struggles with just seeming like a diet version of real racing. And I know it's not exactly like that, and I appreciate sim racing for what it is being a sim racer myself. But as an actual viewer, you can kind of tell that, man, this is just watching this is just a little bit like watching a NASCAR race, except maybe things are a little more boring or the commentators aren't as professional or whatever. Now, iRacing esports itself will stay alive as long as they have the backing of actual racing series like NASCAR for the Coke series, but I just don't think there's potential in it to grow to the crazy numbers or even a good fraction of the crazy numbers that you see with actual sustainable esports. And sort of a tangent on, we'll call it number 2B here, I think that Road to Pro has actually been a net negative on the oval community. I think the main goal of iRacing should be just like any other video game, cultivate a fun experience for the player base. And Road to Pro I just don't feel like has accomplished that. When I talk to people that do Road to Pro, and I did Road to Pro myself but not extremely seriously, and even people making it up to the Coke series, it just seems like it's a lot of work for some money, which is very good, but at the end of the day it seems to almost kill the passion of racing in these people. And when we're turning away some of the best on the service because they're not willing to put in the time or effort it is to compete on the level where they want to compete on, then it's almost like, what was the point of it all? In my opinion, fixed race participation has gone way down ever since the introduction to Road to Pro because all the people are spending their time working in test sessions and practice sessions, working with their teams on Road to Pro for so long that they just don't feel like racing anything else anymore. And I think that hurts the rest of the racers on the service because they're not around to really race with the best as much anymore. They're stuck with people like me. I don't even know if there's a fix to any of this. I just think from what I've been seeing that Road to Pro has created a little more negativity and toxicness even in the oval community, and it's really caused everything from the top down to suffer. Now let's get into a little more of the nitty gritty of iRacing and not just overarching concepts. I really think that people overuse the protest system to the point where it's kind of ridiculous. This one is probably more of a popular, unpopular opinion, but I wanted to get it out anyways, is that if you go on the iRacing Reddit, you'll see a bunch of people posting, oh, should I protest this? And it's just a guy being stupid, making a bad rejoin, whatever. And I know that a lot of people get annoyed at those posts, but I kind of just want to reiterate that the protest system is not particularly made for people being a little dumb, people making an over-aggressive move, people being stupid in one specific moment. What it's really meant for is getting behavior out of the game that people do intentionally and maliciously. So like retaliating on someone, intentional wrecking someone, all that, I'm all for protesting. But if you're protesting every single stupid move that you see in a race, especially if you're towards the mid and bottom splits, it's just racing. People are learning. I really don't think that people should be wasting their time and wasting iRacing's time by protesting something where it's clearly just a mistake, not malicious. I see it way too much, honestly. In fact, my perfect idea of an iRacing protest system is that it would cost like $1 out of iRacing credit to file a protest. And if the protest goes through successfully, you get credited the dollar back. And if it doesn't go through successfully, then they keep the dollar. I think this would really benefit having the amount of bad quality protests going in, people saying, oh, I know this guy probably won't get suspended for this, but I'm going to protest them anyways because they made a stupid move. Like, that's just wasting everybody's time. And the final hot take I have is that practice is not very valuable. This is probably more applicable to oval than road because road takes a lot of time to learn tracks and understand kind of where you're going. But with oval, when you only have 2 sets of corners, you really can pick up at least the very basics of the track quickly. And then from that point on, I think racing itself is more valuable than any solo practice that you could do. I guess the caveat is that this is more directed towards people who say, okay, I'm just going to do 50 laps and figure out the track. That's almost never the case when you're especially at an average level or so. I think you can kind of get away with that if you have a really good understanding of the car, but that's sort of at a very high level. I think that the best way to practice is either, if you're gonna solo practice, use resources, references, guides, all that stuff. But if you're in the mindset of, I just need to do laps, those are best done in a race because you're gonna be able to experience things that you're not gonna be able to experience when you're by yourself on a track. When you are practicing all by yourself, you're not really getting the idea of what it's like to practice side by side, what runs feel like, what the dirty air feels like. In fact, when I practice with a lot of higher level guys for very serious things like Road to Pro leagues, whatever, you'll very often see people do hosted sessions with like 6 or 7 guys so that they can practice all this stuff because solo practice really isn't too valuable. But for people who are nerds like myself, when you race, especially if you're not too experienced with the track, there will always be someone faster than you in the race to learn from. And using these people as help and following these people, you'll be able to learn much more than if you're just trying to force yourself to go around a track 50 times and somehow have a light bulb turn on in your head. Like I always say, I think that iRacing is 80% knowledge, 20% execution. So if you're doing something perfectly, but it's the wrong idea, you're not fast still. It's better to learn the right ideas and then start building up your execution onto those ideas. And the best way of that is following somebody who's faster than you, watching a guide, or doing something of the lines of using somebody else as a resource. All right, so let me know if you disagreed with any of these takes. I hope you did, because or else I'm really bad at coming up with hot takes. But other than that, I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I hope to see you all on the track.